blessed evening to everyone. Christmas is truly a moment of coming home or going back home. Yesterday, we were driving our car and we passed through the front of the ticketing office of a shipping line. And we saw a long queue of people, and I think almost all of them, if not all of them, were queuing to get a ticket because they want to go back home this Christmas. Last night, I was with a company and I was conversing with the employees of that said company during their party. And one of them sat beside me and said, Pastor, I would be going back home tomorrow. And I said, well, that's good for you. He said, because I want to be with my family. I want to spend time this Christmas with my mom, with my siblings, alongside my wife and children. I want to go home, and tomorrow I'm going to do that. But he said there's going to be a problem because since Friday, there has been a long queue of passengers at the IBT. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to go back home early because of the long queue of those passengers who are also desiring to go back home. As I was imagining about these scenarios, truly, it tells us that Christmas is about going back home. It's about coming home to the family that God has given you. No wonder wherever a person may be, may it be in another city, another town, another province, another country, the desire will always be there. I want to go home on Christmas Day. But don't you know that in a real sense, in the spiritual aspect of life, Christmas is really an invitation for all of us to go back home. This reminds me of a story that Jesus told in the book of Luke chapter 15, verses 11 to 32. Jesus told about the story of a young man who approached his dad one day and said, "Dad, I want to get my share already." While the father is still alive, that was an insult. But this guy, with all the audacity that he had, approached his dad and said, "I want my share." And the dad gave to him all the shares that he could have. And he left his dad, went to a far place, and squandered all his resources. When a famine came, he had a problem. His resources is already depleted. He had to find a job. But because there were no job openings that were great for him, he went into a kind of job that nobody would like to have. He became someone who took care of swines, feeding pigs, something that a Jew will never do. But he was left with no choice. He had to do it for him to survive. Until one day he came to his senses and he said, the workers of my dad are eating good food. While me here, I eat even the leftovers of the pigs. I want to go home. I want to go home. And when this guy decided to go home, true enough, while he was walking back, his dad saw him. And I want to read the passage for all of us this evening so that we would clearly see how the father felt at this moment. Luke 15 verses 20 to 24. So this guy got up and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his slaves, "Quickly, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and has now come to life again. He was lost and has been found." I can feel the joy of the Father seeing His Son coming back home. Well, the story sounds so wonderful. But this is our story. The Son is a kind of character that you and I would hate about. But the Son represents us. We ran away. We squandered what we have. We disobeyed our Father. And that is why there is Christmas. Because this Father who saw Him from a distance, this Father who felt the compassion in His heart for His Son, this Father who ran toward Him and embraced Him and kissed Him, is the same Father that sent His Son to be born on the first Christmas day. Because that Son that was sent into our midst was God's invitation for all of us to go back to Him. He did not send a Christmas card. He did not send an invitation card. God did not send a text message. He did not send an email. He did not send a letter on a stationery paper. He sent His Son. And the baby in the manger is God's invitation for all of us, telling all of us, come home to me, my son. But here is the twist of the parable. Because this parable is not only about the son who came back home, whose life was squandered, and yet the father still felt compassion on him. This is also about the other son, because this guy who ran away had a brother. And his brother stayed with his dad all the while. And when his brother came, he said, "Why are you celebrating for him? I have been with you for a long time. I never left. I never squandered my resources. But have you even celebrated for my presence?" And the father told him, "My son, you have been by my side. Don't be jealous of your brother who came back home." What the father is telling the son is that you gotta rejoice with me every time a lost son comes home. And that could also represent us. We who are at the side of God already, we who are at the family of God already, shall felt the same as the Father feels. Unlike the Pharisees, if you look at the very context of this parable, it leads us back to verses 1 and 2. Because in that particular verses, it says, "Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near to Jesus to listen to him. Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, 'This man receives sinners and eats with them.'" They were grumbling because they didn't like the sinners to go back to Jesus. The sinners are actually represented by the son who left and squandered his wealth. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, are represented by the son who all the while stayed by the side of his dad, who did not rejoice for the coming back home of his brother. We can be the lost son. And the Father has sent His invitation for all of us. And if this is your first time to hear this kind of message, every Christmas day we celebrate the coming of Jesus in a manger. That's God's invitation for you, telling you, "My son, my daughter, come home to me. Because I have been longing to see you. Just as Tatay Jose longs to see his children back home, your God longs to have you back." And if you have been with the Lord in the family of God already, maybe we can relate with the other son. But instead of feeling jealous, may we all have the compassion for the lost, that when they come back to Jesus, we will rejoice with angels in heaven and have compassion just as the heart of the Father has. Looking at this parable, where do you belong? Are you the son who all the while stood beside the Father, and must have the compassion for the lost? Or you are the son who ran away? Receive God's invitation. The baby boy born in a manger is God's invitation for you, telling you, my son, my daughter, my child, come home to me. I have been waiting for you. And because of that, He can express His compassion for you. And if He sees you coming back home, He will run to you, embrace you, and kiss you, and tell you, welcome home, my son, my daughter. I love you. Now you are found. You were once lost. Before you were dead. Now you are alive again. May we all receive the invitation of God this Christmas. Let's all go back to Him. It's a time for us to come home. God bless you all, and Merry Christmas.